Hello and welcome to this very special interview segment. It's about Dangote Refinery. It's the largest single train refinery in the world. It has the capacity to process 650,000 barrels of crude every day. It seems to be getting a lot of attention, unfortunately, not very positive ones. So we're here to clear the air on some of those issues you may have heard about Dangote Refinery and the petroleum products that are being supplied from there and expected to be supplied from there. And to speak to us is the Chief Director, Group Chief Commercial Officer of Dangote Industries, Mr. Rabi Umar. Mr. Umar, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we seem to get a lot of to be getting a lot of attention. Dangote seems to be getting a lot of attention at this time. Unfortunately, it's not a very good one. So I guess it started with the issue of crude, when Dangote cried out to say they cannot access crude locally, they have to import. And if they try to get it locally, it's very expensive. Could you explain to us what's going on around that crude supply?
Well, we started the refinery earlier this year, and we struggled to get enough crude to process from the, producers of crude oil in Nigeria. Of course, that prompted us to look outside, to look for other ways to get our crude. I think at a point, it became clear that there was an issue, and the NUPRC, the upstream regulator, came in and said, okay, there's a domestic supply obligation, because by the PIA, there's a domestic supply obligation that all the IOCs have, all the producers have. And they called for a meeting and read out the guidelines that are supposed to drive how the administration of the crude oil production is done to satisfy local refineries. Because it's not about satisfying Dangote Refinery. It is about satisfying the domestic obligation. 445,000 barrels per day has been designated to be refined locally, because that's the nameplate capacity of our refineries. When I say our refineries, I mean the government-owned refineries, Kaduna, Warri, Port Harcourt 1 and 2. So these 4 refineries were supposed to feed the nation all its fuel needs. And the idea is what we consume as Nigerians is going to be refined in Nigeria. Of course, in the last 30 years, we can talk about how many times have these refineries indeed worked. And of course, probably in the same period, over $12 billion has been spent trying to fix one of them or the other. But the point is this: that crude oil is now being exported. And when we came into operation, we expected that, of course, there will be crude oil available for us to refine, which at that point was not enough. In fact, some of the guidelines that were agreed with the government or with the NUPRC have not started to come into effect. We want to see them being implemented. The agreements are there, and it's a very good plan, but we want to see it in action. For the month of August, we got nothing. For the month of September, we're expecting 5 cargoes from NNPC, and we're also importing another 10 cargoes from Brazil and from the United States of America.
But I do remember before the operations of Dangote, there was in the news that there was an agreement that NNPC would be supplying a certain amount of crude to Dangote monthly.
Yes. That has not seen the light of day. And part of the agreement was also what NNPC took a stake in the refinery, and part of it was supposed to be through those supplies, and also there's a pricing part of it that is supposed to also affect it. Without going into much detail, that hasn't come through, which is why we are at where we are in terms of the percentage of ownership of NNPC in the refinery.
Yeah, so NNPCL had come out to say, well, for commercial reasons, that's why they have not increased their stake, to what it was promised to be. Is that a factor in this crude supply issue?
To the best of our knowledge, we don't think so, because I think the domestic crude obligation is not a domestic crude obligation to Dangote. It's a domestic crude supply obligation to Nigeria, to Nigerian refiners. So we don't think that is a factor. But I wouldn't want to be speculative in terms of what we cannot prove.
So now that the NUPRC has intervened and they have said IOC should publish guidelines, do we know how that's going to work? What are your expectations, from that intervention?
Okay, like I said earlier, our expectation is to see an improved supply of crude at reasonable levels, and the plan is robust. And if it were to work, then I don't expect that there will be any challenges or there will be a need for us, or at least I would say it will reduce the need for going abroad to look for crude cargoes.
But have you had conversations with the IOCs get their own sentiment about this? That could gauge if it's going to work or not.
Yes, of course, we're engaging with them. And one of the things that maybe is worth sharing with Nigerians or with the general population is this. Whilst we are going to import cargoes from abroad, most of the cargoes from Nigeria are being tendered to be supplied to Indonesia. So the question is, does it really make sense to take cargoes from Nigeria and sell to Indonesia, and then you are also importing to bring it here and refine, and that is what we're going to use in terms of finished products? So it simply doesn't make sense to me.
Perhaps is it an obligation, a commitment that Nigeria has done? Is that why it seems they're compelled, to sell outside the country when the domestic market is hungry?
When you say an obligation, I would answer it this way. You have domestic obligation to supply Nigeria. That has not been fulfilled, and you're supplying other countries. So it's not a question of obligation as far as we're concerned, because the obligation should be, first of all, feed yourself. First of all, make sure you can even survive before you talk about exporting. No country exports what it needs. What you see is people exporting their excess. So if I have a capacity to produce 10 and I'm using 8, then of course the excess of 2 will be exported. But I will first of all make sure that I'm self-sufficient. And there are many examples across the world. Let's not forget, when COVID hit, India banned export of wheat and rice. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to protect their nation. People talk about energy security or security. That was food security. And what did India do? They actually banned export of these products because they wanted to make sure they have security. So it cannot be that our reliance on ensuring that we have security is to actually import. As far as I'm concerned, it sounds counterintuitive. It should be the opposite, whereby I make sure I have enough, then whatever I have as excess is what I'm then exporting. I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, so when do we expect these guidelines to kick in? It's supposed to be immediately, so we know to follow through and see if it's really impactful.
The guidelines are supposed to kick in immediately, and like I said, we're waiting to see them in effect. Because it's one thing to prepare a plan, it's another thing to execute. So we're waiting to see that it's indeed implemented, the way it is designed. But it looks good on paper.
Yes, it looks good on paper. So the next thing is the issue of quality. The NMDPRA had alleged that products from the Dangote Refinery are substandard. How would you respond to that?
I would say it's quite unfortunate that a company is being demarketed by a regulator. I think that's quite unfortunate. But more specific to the question you asked, first of all, when we started production, we started at a time when there are different stages in commissioning a refinery, and there are different components or parts that need to be commissioned one after the other. There's a very, very complex sequence to starting a refinery. And of course, at that point in time, our sulfur content was between 600 to 650. Now, gradually, that number has been coming down. As we speak, over the weekend, the House of Reps, led by the Honorable Speaker, were at the refinery. And on their way there, they decided to stop at 2 petrol stations and take samples of the product being sold. Because at the end of the day, the only way you know the quality of the product that is getting into your tank is what is at the petrol stations. And the first question, when they took that sample, they now went to the refinery and they took samples of the refinery's products as well. And all three were tested. And the numbers are out. One of them was 2,600, over 2,600 in terms of ppm, in terms of sulfur content. Another one was 1,800. Our own was 87.6. There's another parameter called the flash point that was tested. One was 63, another one was 23, and then our own was 97. So let me explain. When you talk about sulfur content, sulfur is a very, very corrosive chemical. And sulfur actually in product damages the environment. I think I heard one commentator saying that's why when you take pictures abroad, they look clearer. It's the same telephone you use to take those pictures. Yet when you take them abroad, they look clearer. When you take them here, they look cloudier. And even when you just take a look at the environment, it sounds suffocating, all kinds of fumes. All these are part of what sulfur does. We talk about the ozone layer, we talk about carbon emission. It destroys the environment, in addition to affecting the quality of your equipment. Then the flash point is also another dangerous parameter. The lower the flash point, the higher the chances of having a fire, meaning that you can be transporting the product and you can have fire. And on all these parameters, the test conducted at our refinery indicated that our product is far more superior. Now, if that product at the petrol stations did not come from the refinery, where did it come from? If indeed all imports into Nigeria are on spec, how did that product find its way into the tanks in the petrol station? And that's why it's finding its way into people's engines and also affecting the quality of engines. If you think about it, do you think diesel engines are designed to last only 4 or 5 years? Part of the reason why they do not last in Nigeria is because of the quality of fuel that you put into them, which is why countries like the Netherlands and Belgium have banned, any kind of association with high sulfur products. So it is not true to say that we have high sulfur products. Last point I would also like to make is there's an ECOWAS declaration when it comes to the quality of diesel. And that ECOWAS declaration gave African refiners up until January 2025 to comply with the sulfur content of the product. Whereas imports into West Africa are supposed to be at 50 parts per mil. That is parts per mil. That's what ppm means. And what was coming in is much higher. What we tested at those petrol stations is much higher than what we are doing. We started at 600 to 650, like I said, but we have been coming down. A last point I would like to make, when people talk about, the refinery, the quality, today we are selling jet fuel into every continent. We have sold into the US. We have sold into Europe and on other parts of the world. So the question is, by saying that it's substandard, are you saying that the world, not just Nigeria, is putting a product that is substandard into planes and flying people? Because some of these comments need to also be a little more, we need to be a little more circumspect on some of the comments that we're hearing. And that's why we're talking this way, because we want to clear the air and assure Nigerians we have a $20 billion investment in a refinery. And today, in my own adult life, in my own lifetime, I have not seen any investment. I have a piece of paper here. This was 1975. What is the title? Can you read it out for me?
Strategy to beat fuel crisis outlined.
This was on 31st of March, 1975. You can have a copy.
Okay. I think the camera would want to...
This was in 1975. And part of the third national development plan that started in 1972 is still talking about fuel scarcity. To date, we have 22,000 kilometers of pipeline. And this was when this plan was rolled out by by the head of state, Gowon, at that time. And the idea was that we wanted to build a network of pipeline to ensure that we are able to transport product across the country. As I'm talking to you, that pipeline system is not working as we speak. That system is not working. All right? The plan is not working. Don't we have scarcity? How many times have you seen scarcity of product in the last couple of weeks? So it's preposterous to say that when you have a refinery and you're able to take your raw material and turn it into a finished product, that is what is creating monopoly. So, I mean, does it mean you're better off importing product and exporting your jobs and importing poverty? Because effectively, if you look at what is happening, we need to talk about it. Today, if you follow the news, America has announced 100% duty on Chinese electronic vehicles. Why are they doing that? Why did India stop exporting wheat and rice? It's to protect their industries and make sure that at least they have these products available domestically. So it's very, very strange hearing that the way to energy security is to be importing the product from abroad on ships.
All right, so Mr. Mar, I would like to go back to that visit of the lawmakers, which is the issue of quality. So we saw the lawmakers at your factory, and we saw the test. Our correspondent, Olu Philip, was there, filing the report and showed all of the numbers as you have referred to. Now that you have those numbers and you had witnesses in the lawmakers, what's next?
I think we would like to state categorically, and that's why we're doing this, that we do not produce substandard products. Our products compared to any in the world. And we are actually inviting the civil society organization and Nigerians to take samples and test your product. If you want help, there are companies like SGS and Cotecna that can do it for you. But we would like to, just clear the air on the fact that, one, we do not produce substandard products. Our product goes into planes in America and in Europe. And even in Nigeria, I don't think anybody is going to allow any substandard product to get on a plane. So we would really like to invite, the regulators to come and test. Because when we talk about tests, we have one of the best labs in the world you can find anywhere in the world. And we don't know where the regulator tests the product. Because the last we checked, I don't think they have, a lab. And they are using third-party labs to test for the imports. Whilst we cannot comment on that, but we do know that our facilities are world-class, and we challenge anybody to test our product and see if there's anything wrong with our product.
But you've been working with the regulator, NMDPRA, and the others every step of the way, I believe, because with such a huge investments and projects, you do need approval at every point.
We do, and we did get all the approvals. And as a matter of fact, not only that, every single ship that comes to load from the facility needs approval of the regulator. So it is very confusing, I would say, for the same regulator that certifies the product that leaves the facility in terms of approval. So does it mean they have been approving, bad quality fuel leaving the facility? I've addressed the issue of the ppm already, and that's the only aspect that was a little off, and it is getting better as we speak. Our ppm has come down in terms of production to about 30. And by the end of this month, we're going to 10. 10 is the best ppm you can find. It's called ultra low sulfur diesel. And that is the same as the EN 590 or the European standard that everybody talks about, and is the highest or the highest quality you can find. Meaning that, technically speaking, we can sell it into any part of the world. In terms of standards, today, if you go to see other African countries, There are a few countries that actually have 50 ppm standard. There are people with 200, 300. I don't want to call the countries, but you can check which country has which standard in terms of sulfur content, meaning that the product we are producing is a global product. It can go anywhere in the world.
You know, a lot of people, and as expected, have been talking about this, and you know, there's the issue of monopoly also coming up. But I do know that we have modular refineries and all of that. So I wonder why monopoly is coming into the conversation with Dangote at this time.
So for me, there are a few misconceptions and a few things that Nigerians need to understand. We need to explain to Nigerians. The issue of monopoly, what is monopoly? Monopoly means you're the only player in or if you talk about oligopoly, you're a few players in a sector. Now, to the extent that you're not using any illegal or even legal means to stop people from, setting up their factories, people need to understand what it takes. There are industries that have high barriers to entry. Those barriers are natural. $20 billion, like I said, and I'll repeat myself, I haven't seen that size of investment. And I challenge anybody to show me anywhere they have seen a $20 billion investment in this continent, on this continent. That is number one. So the barrier to entry, sometimes it is a question of technical capacity. Sometimes it's the size, the sheer size of amount of money you need. Countries build refineries, not individuals. We haven't been able to manage and run our refineries effectively in the last 40, 50 years. So here is a Nigerian who believes in Nigeria. Because let's not forget, he also has the chance to take his money abroad. You have the likes of Google, Tesla, and all these big companies and invest it and go and be enjoying somewhere abroad. But he chose to come and invest it. And I'll give you an example. In the cement business in 2014, the size of our cement business was $25 billion. Today, that same business, the size of the business is $9 billion. Why? And yet, this person has not stopped investing in the same economy.
I mean, the picture that paints is, yes, we can have petrol from Dangote, but about how much will it get if there's no government intervention, seeing some of these scenarios that we have? I think that's what I hear you say.
Yes, because you see, people talk about, we're selling a product in US dollar, or no, how you pricing the product. It's a question of your input. You buy crude oil in dollars. You have to go find the dollars and you have to pay somebody. Today, in a month, we need over $1.3 billion to be able to buy the crude that we need. Where is the money going to come from? Right? So there needs to be some sort of clarity as to how that arrangement would work. Because today, for us, it's very simple. Even today, people go out and bring in this product from somewhere. Of course, they can come and buy the same product from the refinery. It doesn't change. The source is what changes. It doesn't change the fact that we don't get involved in what happens in terms of pricing. Because again, you can't be selling at half of your cost.
So I guess it's important to highlight that because you've said it again, that we could expect petrol from Dangote refineries at the beginning of August. But then, because we do know almost for sure that there's government intervention, which is the subsidy factor when you do the landing cost and all of that, then that might be a deterring factor to actually having petrol come to consumers from Dangote.
Not really, not necessarily. That's what I was trying to explain. In that, today what happens? You go to wherever, Rotterdam, you go to Antwerp or, Amsterdam, Ara region, and you bring in cargoes and you bring them into Nigeria to sell. There's a price for that product. The price of the product is on the basis of what is called Platts, which is the S&P global indexation of, prices of petroleum products. Now, the landing cost of the product is the cost of the product in Europe plus shipping to bring it to West Africa. And then you have all the other handling charges. So my point is, it doesn't matter, where the product comes from as far as you feed the nation, right? So what we're saying here is that instead of going to ARA to bring in the cargo, you can come and take the product from Dangote Refinery. That's what I'm trying to explain, because of the fact that it's a regulated product. For a deregulated product, you don't need to talk about that, because is a willing buyer, willing seller basis. It's a commercial arrangement.
All right, there's also the issue of incentives. Mr. Dangote had said during that visit, Vonolomicus, that the company has not enjoyed any incentive from the government. Even the land where the industry is located was paid for in full, $100 million, according to him. And one would have thought that, to encourage the private sector, that perhaps there are some incentives that would, especially in this petroleum, talking about energy security in the country.
Well, we haven't received any incentives. There have been no incentives. And people talk about incentives even in our other businesses as if it's the exclusive preserve of Dangote Group. Whatever it is that is available to us is available to others. And we do not receive any incentive. People talk about Forex, for example. We are buying Forex at the rate that is accessible to everybody. We are not buying Forex at a rate that is special to us. So when people talk about some of these things, I think there are a lot of myths, if you like, in terms of the operation. We haven't received anything that is special. Of course, we are not saying that there's no, an environment, if you like. We wouldn't have been able to build it if Lagos State government didn't give us the land, even if you're willing to pay. We're not saying that. But what we're saying is there's nothing special, because the conversation around monopoly, the conversation around, incentive is to say that we are getting a special treatment, which you would expect ordinarily, but we did not ask for any incentive. We did not receive, but in fairness, we did not ask. There are companies, I think like Mittal and one other South Korean company, that wanted to come into Nigeria to set up refineries. And they were given oil blocks back in the day. They were given oil blocks to kind of encourage them, to support them in that. But in our own case, because we know everything we touch, somebody say, oh, okay, we're getting special treatment. We never even asked. So we didn't ask for it and we did not receive. So we're not complaining that we did not receive. We just want to clear the air that we did not ask and we did not get.
So we'll just hope for the best. And hope that petrol, at least, because even as we speak, a lot of filling stations are not open, that by 1st of August, all of this would have cleared off and we would see petrol, which is the most basic of the needs, and expectation from Dangote.
Yes, we are going to be producing petrol in August, by the grace of God.
All right, we have to thank you so much, Mr. Rabi Umar, Director, Group Chief Commercial Officer, Dangote Industries. And, well, as you said, Nigerians are looking forward to that, and we'll be counting down to this.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, so that's it, this special conversation to clear the air on some of those things you may have heard about Dangote petroleum products. And, well, we heard it from the representative there. Nigerians are counting down now. We do hope that the government and regulators will also make this happen. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Thank you for watching.